Picture this, standing in your mother's kitchen on Christmas Eve wearing an apron, flour dusting your hands while 25 guests laugh in the living room. Your mother walks in, sees the empty stove, and smirks. It's only 25 people. Why haven't you started cooking? That was me on December 23rd. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't tell her about the $4 million company she knew nothing about. Instead, I smiled, untied my apron, and booked a one-way ticket to Miami, leaving behind an empty kitchen and a Christmas dinner that would never exist. My name is James, and this is how I finally stopped being my family's servant. 15 years earlier, Christmas 2009, I was 22, fresh from college with a communications degree and nowhere to go. The economy had collapsed. I was sleeping in my childhood bedroom in Denver, sending resumes into the void. My parents' house smelled like pine and cinnamon that December evening. Mom had decorated every corner, garlands, candles, porcelain angels everywhere. 15 guests were coming, aunts, uncles, cousins, dad's business associates. "You're handling dinner," Mom announced while arranging flowers. Not a question, a statement. My sister Sarah was 18, a freshman at CU, lounging on the couch scrolling through her phone. "I have job applications to finish," I said carefully. Mom's voice carried that familiar edge, the one that meant the conversation was over. This is family. Family comes first. That was the first sign I was being treated differently. Sarah got exemptions. I got assignments. I spent the next 2 days in the kitchen, roasted a 12-pound turkey, made mashed potatoes from scratch, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, dinner rolls, 2 pies. I set the table, polished the silverware, arranged the centerpiece. When guests arrived on Christmas Eve, I was still wearing an apron stained with gravy. Dad stood in the living room with scotch, introducing Sarah to his business partner, Harold. "This is my youngest, Sarah. She's studying marketing at CU, going to take over the company someday." Sarah smiled. Harold shook her hand warmly. I walked past carrying appetizers. Dad glanced at me, then turned back to Harold without a word. That was the second sign. Sarah was the future. I was invisible. The pattern repeated every holiday after that. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, anniversaries, birthdays. I was always in the kitchen or cleaning afterward. Sarah was always at the table, charming guests being showcased. By 2012, I'd started my own event planning business, Stellar Events. I was good at logistics, managing vendors, creating experiences. I'd learned those skills in my parents' kitchen, ironically. When I mentioned it to Mom, she barely looked up from her magazine. "That's nice, dear. Can you pick up dry cleaning on your way home?" Dad never asked about it, Sarah never asked about it, so I stopped talking about it. For 12 years, I built Stellar Events in silence. My first major client paid me $8,000 in 2014. By 2018, I had 5 employees and an office downtown. By 2022, I was managing events for Fortune 500 companies. But when I visited my parents, I wore jeans and a plain sweater. I drove my old Honda instead of my new Audi. I never mentioned the 23 employees on my payroll or the $4.2 million in revenue we generated in 2024. Why? Because they never asked, and I was tired of offering information that would be dismissed. Last Thanksgiving, November 2024, I just closed a deal worth $600,000. I was exhausted but satisfied. Then I walked into my parents' house and Mom handed me an apron. Turkey needs basting every 30 minutes. I made a schedule. I managed 23 employees. I negotiated with CEOs. I'd been profiled in 3 industry publications. And my mother handed me a basting schedule. That night, elbows deep in dishwater after dinner, I made a decision. This would be my last holiday as the family's servant. I didn't know how I'd break the cycle. I just knew I couldn't do this anymore. "I'm going to Miami," I said quietly. "You can figure out the dinner without me. If you walk out on this family, don't bother coming back." I should have felt devastated. Instead, I felt relief. Goodbye, Mom. I hung up and sat in the silence of my office, heart racing, mind strangely calm. Marcus appeared in my doorway. "You okay?" She wanted me to cancel Miami to cook for 25 people on Christmas Eve. When I said no, she told me not to come back. He shook his head slowly. Marcus had been with me since Stellar was just a dream and a spreadsheet. He'd watched me build something real while my family dismissed it as a hobby. "You're making the right call," he said. That night, I packed a carry-on with professional clothes, my laptop, contracts, and one thing more, the October issue of Forbes with my face on page 47. Maybe as proof, maybe as armor. At 8:45 p.m., my plane lifted off from Denver, climbing through snow clouds toward Miami. Below me, my family was probably sitting in the living room, furious at my absence. Let them be furious. I had a contract to sign. Around midnight, somewhere over Texas, I pulled out the Forbes magazine. There I was, a full-page photo standing in my office, arms crossed, the Denver skyline behind me. The quiet force behind Stellar Events. I read the opening paragraph for the 20th time. In an industry dominated by loud personalities and flashy self-promotion, Lily Septon has built a $4 million event empire through meticulous attention to detail. The article detailed our 93% client retention rate, our expansion into sustainable practices, quotes from 3 CEOs calling me indispensable, and my family had no idea it existed. I'd considered showing them. Then I imagined Mom's response, something about how I looked tired in the photo, or how Sarah's friend had also been in a magazine once, so it wasn't that big a deal. I tucked the magazine back and felt the plane begin its descent. My phone buzzed as we taxied to the gate. An email from Victoria Caldwell confirming our meeting at 11 a.m., asking me to bring identification for notarization. The legal team would have the final contract ready for signatures. I saved the email, then took a screenshot. Proof. Evidence. The habits of someone who'd learned that words mean nothing without documentation. I checked into the Fontainebleau at 2 a.m. and slept for 6 hours. When I woke on December 24th, I had 11 new text messages. 4 from Mom, 3 from Sarah, 2 from Dad. I didn't read any of them. Instead, I showered, dressed in my best charcoal suit, and prepared my notes. At 10:30 a.m., I took an Uber to Meridian Holdings headquarters, a glass tower reflecting the December sun like a beacon. The receptionist handed me a visitor badge. 40th floor. The elevator ride felt endless. My heart pounded. This was it. The meeting that could change everything. But as the elevator climbed, my phone buzzed. A call from Sarah. I declined it. Then a voicemail. Against my better judgment, I listened. Lily, it's Sarah. Mom is having a breakdown. The caterers won't come on Christmas Eve. Dad's calling in favors, but no one can help. Victoria Caldwell is supposed to be at our dinner tonight, and we have nothing to serve. This is your fault. I stopped the voicemail. One sentence echoed. Victoria Caldwell is supposed to be at our dinner tonight. I stared at my phone as the elevator doors opened. Victoria Caldwell, CEO of Meridian Holdings, the woman I was about to meet, was coming to my parents' house for Christmas dinner. How was that possible? The connection became clear. She knew my father through business circles. Denver's wealthy weren't that large a circle. Did Victoria know I was Richard Septon's daughter? Did she know the family she was visiting tonight was the same family I just walked away from? The assistant opened the conference room door. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Biscayne Bay. Legal documents spread across a long table, and at the head stood Victoria Caldwell. Early 50s, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, the look of someone who'd built an empire from nothing. Her handshake was firm. Miss Septon, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. The pleasure is mine, I replied, sitting down. I have a flight to Denver this afternoon, she mentioned. Denver. My stomach tightened. The contract signing took 45 minutes. Victoria was thorough, asking pointed questions about our capacity, our vendor relationships, contingency protocols. At 11:52 a.m., we both signed. A photographer captured the moment, Victoria and me shaking hands, the Miami skyline glittering behind us. Welcome to the Meridian family, Victoria said warmly. I have a feeling this is going to be an exceptional partnership. As she gathered her things, she paused. I'm spending Christmas Eve with some business associates in Denver, the Septons. Do you know them? My throat tightened. Richard runs a construction supply company. His daughter Sarah is quite impressive. His wife invited me to their Christmas dinner. I'm told the food is spectacular. The food I was supposed to have cooked. It's a common name, I said instead. Victoria nodded and left. I sat alone in the empty conference room, the signed contract heavy in my hands. She didn't know. She had no idea that the woman she'd just invested $2.1 million in was the daughter she was about to meet at my parents' dinner tonight. She didn't know that the family she was visiting had spent 15 years dismissing my work as a hobby. And when she arrived at my parents' house and found no dinner prepared, what would happen then? I flew back that afternoon, landing in Denver at 6:47 p.m., exactly when the Christmas dinner was supposed to begin. I took an Uber to my apartment, ordered Thai food, and turned off my phone. For the first time in 15 years, I spent Christmas Eve alone. It was peaceful. That's Lily, Grace said, zooming in on the photo. Lily Septon, shaking hands with Victoria Caldwell in a very fancy office. Victoria stepped forward, peering at the post. Her expression shifted. Recognition, then surprise, then delighted amusement. Lily Septon. Your daughter is Lily Septon, founder of Stellar Events. My mother's mouth opened and closed. Yes, Lily is our daughter, but I don't understand. What is Stellar Events? Victoria laughed, a genuine, warm sound. Stellar Events is one of the most successful event planning companies in the Rocky Mountain region. I just signed a $2.1 million contract with her this morning. $2.1 million. Richard went pale. That's more than our company's annual profit. Your daughter has built something remarkable, Victoria continued. I read her profile in Forbes last October. Absolutely inspiring. Her approach to sustainable event design is years ahead of the industry. Forbes. My sister's voice cracked. Lily was in Forbes? Grace was already searching on her phone. Yes, here it is. October issue. The quiet force behind Stellar Events. She turned the screen around. There I was in my corner office, arms crossed, looking directly at the camera. Professional, confident, successful. Everything my family had convinced themselves I wasn't. More guests drifted over, drawn by the commotion. Soon a crowd had formed, passing phones back and forth, reading excerpts aloud. She has 23 employees, 4 million in revenue this year. I believe in showing up, not showing off. My mother stood frozen in the center of the chaos, her carefully constructed Christmas falling apart around her. Why didn't she tell us? She whispered. Perhaps, Victoria said gently, you didn't ask. The silence was devastating. Grace Thompson, who'd attended my parents' Christmas dinners for 15 years, spoke next. Margaret, I always wondered about Lily. She was always in the kitchen, always working, and you barely mentioned her. Whenever I asked about her, you changed the subject. She seemed so capable. Remember those stuffed mushrooms she made years ago? Best I ever tasted. I should have known she'd do something with that talent. Harold Thompson, my father's business partner, stepped forward. Richard, I had no idea your daughter ran a $4 million company. Why on earth didn't you tell me? We could have done business together. My father had no answer. Sarah clutched her wine glass like a lifeline, her perfect hostess facade crumbling. She never said anything. She just let us think she was... Let you think what? Victoria asked, one eyebrow raised. That she was unsuccessful, unimportant. Victoria Caldwell surveyed the room with the calm assessment of a CEO who'd just solved a puzzle. I met Lily this morning. She was professional, prepared, and one of the most impressive young executives I've encountered. We talked for nearly an hour before signing. She never mentioned she was related to you. Another blow. My mother's hand trembled as she set down her wine glass. She didn't tell you that we're her family? I asked if she was related to the Denver Septons. She said it was a common name. The implication landed hard. I hadn't claimed them. I hadn't wanted to be associated with them. I'd kept my family's connection hidden. That's why she's not here tonight. Grace breathed, realization dawning. That's why there's no dinner. She was in Miami signing this contract, while you expected her to cook for 25 people. This is a family matter, Richard said, his face turning purple. Is it? Victoria asked coolly. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been treating a very successful businesswoman like household help. And when she finally had an opportunity that mattered, a contract with my company no less, you expected her to prioritize dinner rolls over her career. The silence was absolute. Silent Night played ironically in the background. Victoria turned to my parents with a pleasant smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I think I understand now why Lily didn't mention the connection. Please give her my regards when you speak to her, and thank her for me. If she hadn't stepped away from this dinner, we might never have met. She set down her untouched wine glass. Thank you for the invitation. It was illuminating. She left without looking back. The front door closed. The room erupted. Guests whispered about Forbes articles and million-dollar contracts, and the daughter the Septons never mentioned. My mother sank into a chair, her Christmas destroyed. My father retreated to his study, slamming the door. Sarah fled upstairs. Tomorrow, I would fly home as the CEO who had just landed the biggest contract in Stellar Events history. My family would have to decide, did they want a relationship with me, or only the version of me that stayed small, stayed quiet, stayed in the kitchen? The fallout began on December 26th. Victoria Caldwell's LinkedIn post had been shared over 2,000 times by morning. The comments filled with congratulations, industry connections reaching out, potential clients expressing interest. Entrepreneur Magazine requested an interview about rising stars in the event industry. My inbox overflowed with partnership inquiries from companies I'd been chasing for years. The Meridian contract didn't just secure our future, it announced us to the world. But in Denver, the ripples looked different. Grace Thompson posted on Facebook that afternoon. This Christmas, I learned an important lesson. Never underestimate the people in your own family. Sometimes the most successful person in the room is the one nobody notices. The post got 287 likes. Women from my mother's charity committee, her book club, her garden society, all called with thinly veiled curiosity. I heard your daughter is quite the businesswoman. Why didn't you ever mention she was so successful? My mother's carefully cultivated image, devoted wife, supportive mother, pillar of the community, now had cracks. My father faced his own reckoning. Harold Thompson called on December 27th. Richard, I'd like to bring in an event planning partner for our launch celebration. Lily's company, Stellar Events. I saw her Forbes profile. Very impressive. I'd like you to make an introduction. My father, who had never once introduced me to a business contact, had no choice. Harold didn't wait anyway. He found my business email and sent a formal inquiry that afternoon. I responded within 2 hours with a proposal. Sarah's situation was more satisfying, if I'm being honest. She'd spent months cultivating a relationship with Meridian Holdings, positioning Dad's company as a supplier for their Denver developments. On December 28th, she reached out to Victoria Caldwell's office requesting a follow-up meeting. The response came back, Ms. Caldwell's schedule is fully committed through Q1. For future inquiries, please direct your correspondence to our standard vendor application process. Translation, you're not a priority. Sarah's identity as the successful daughter, built on years of parental favoritism, shattered in 72 hours. I didn't feel joy at her pain, but I wasn't sorry either. By December 30th, I had confirmed 3 new client meetings for January, received 2 job offers I declined, been contacted by a literary agent about a memoir, projected a 35% revenue increase for 2025. Marcus said it perfectly. You've been working toward this moment for 12 years. Every late night, every difficult client, every sacrifice, it led here. You deserve this. For the first time, I believed him. Then, on December 29th, a letter arrived, not an email, an actual handwritten letter from my father. Dear Lily, I've spent the last 4 days trying to understand how I missed what was right in front of me. You built a real company with employees and clients and revenue that exceeds my own. And I didn't know because I never asked. I was wrong. Deeply, terribly wrong. I don't expect forgiveness. I haven't earned it. But I want you to know that I see you now. I see what you've accomplished. And I am proud, belatedly, inadequately, but genuinely proud of the woman you've become. Your father, Richard. I read it 3 times, then made coffee. A letter didn't erase 15 years. Words didn't undo actions. But it was a start. New Year's Eve, December 31st, I stood at my window watching fireworks explode over downtown Denver. At 11:47 p.m., I called my father. I'm willing to try to rebuild something, I said, but not the way things were. No more being the family caterer. No more dismissing my work. If I come to family events, I come as a guest, an equal, not as staff. That's fair, he said. More than fair. And I need you to actually ask about my life, my company, my goals. Be interested. Another pause. I should have been doing that all along. Yes, you should have. At midnight, fireworks reached their crescendo. My phone buzzed. Marcus. Happy New Year, boss. 2025 is going to be incredible. I typed back, you're right, it already is. Then I opened a new document and wrote out my boundaries. Clear, professional, non-negotiable. I will attend family gatherings as a guest, not a servant. I will not accept disrespect disguised as humor. I will not apologize for my success. I will be treated as an equal, or I will not participate. My parents are not perfect. Sarah may never apologize, but that's not my problem anymore. My problem is building the life I've earned, the relationships I choose. That's my story. A 15-year journey from being the family servant to signing a $2.1 million contract while my family scrambled without me. If you've ever felt overlooked by the people who should love you most, I want you to know, your success doesn't require their approval. It only requires you to bet on yourself. Thank you for watching.